Hey there guys, and welcome back. And we are on session 17 of LiteLike. So first thing, elephant in the room. All this changes I did up here to the rest of the sessions. As you can see, with the exception of this guy right here, because obviously this guy was missing AM PMs, but everything else was just me spacing it out so that they would stay in line, just a little bit of OCD keeping everything in line. But anyway, as you can see, we got 2 sessions in today. The first one was a little bit of a downer. Just one of those things. I think it's mostly because I was working on the event cycle, or the event features, the event module, in the first hour, and there's a lot to consider with that. We'll talk about that when we get there. But the second hour was super duper eventful, and as you can see, I even went 10 minutes over. So one of those things, whoops, but at the same time it was worth it because we got done a major part in the map demo. So since I talked about events, let's start at the events, and I will go ahead and kick you over to VS Code. So VS Code, events, where's events at? I guess I'll just click it in the sidebar. There we go. And let me get GitHub up on the other window so I can see. Okay, so basically the whole entire, everything you see here was not here before. This was an empty module before this morning. Something that I've been trying to get around to doing and had yet to get there. So let's talk about how I've set this up so far. And it's one of these things, again, as I said, there's a lot to consider with this, and I'm not even sure if I'm 100% happy with what I've got so far, but it's at least what we have on paper. And it may in fact be acceptable. So first off, as you can see, we have encounter types. We have 3 types, which is combat. That should be pretty self-explanatory. Basically, when we trigger a combat event, then we actually start the event object over in combat, or I mean the combat object over in combat. There you go. So we create a new one of these when that happens. That should be handled, I believe, by the game. Basically, you will not see any code in here, and I don't think we will. Sorry, I forgot. I did put init encounter in here, but what I meant to say is when this is created, it does not actually initialize itself. That's what I meant by it doesn't actually do anything, where I was going with that. So it has an init on it, but as you can see, for example, with the choice encounter, it only returns its options. And it's one of these things where it really depends on how the game wants to handle it, which is why I left it like that. So while this can create a new combat object and it returns this combat, the game itself is actually going to have to trigger the init encounter, even though we set up this combat encounter as an object. So the combat encounter, which again is a subclass of encounter, is really just a holder. All it does is just provide a slight benefit, a slight interface into the components here. But it's not going to run the combat by itself. For example, it does not call combat loop, right? All that stuff really has to be done by something else. I'm assuming at this point the game object, but that's something I'm still trying to puzzle together, which is why I was a bit stuck and we did not get anything that much done in the first hour. So this was maybe 45 minutes, honestly, of the first hour. I was just sitting here trying to think through all this. And the other thing I should say while we're here is encounter sequence. All this is just a list of encounters that you'll cycle through. So this is the dungeons. You know, you go into a dungeon, has multiple floors. And basically this is just our way of keeping track of the floors. Very simply put. So get and increment. Plain and simple. And again, as I was saying before I cut myself off, this was like 45 minutes of the first hour. This was me just sitting here going, okay, is this going to work? How exactly do I want this to work? Am I pigeonholing myself? Am I going to have to come back and change a bunch of this because I do not have a clear idea of how I want this to work, etc. So that was a lot of wishy-washy stuff in the first hour. For rewards, obviously you can see we have items, which could be items or resources, unlocks, and maps as the reward types, and down here you can see that reward itself is a list of those objects, each of which has one of those types, and then a value associated with it. And that likewise could get a little bit sketchy because, again, something's going to have to parse that out, because the value here, if it's an item, then first off, we're going to have to figure out whether or not it's an item, a resource, a weapon, etc., that kind of thing. So consumable item, a resource, a weapon is a different type of item, etc., etc., etc. So that can get a little sketchy, which is why, another thing I was worrying about. Or it could be an unlock, this type could be an unlock, in which case that's actually pretty straightforward because we have flags set up for that. And then map, because in a dark room, you can actually trade random encounter people for information on the map. So they'll show you stuff on the map. They'll remove the fog of war. So that's what map would be. And actually, the other thing I should note is this unlock, even though I said it's pretty straightforward because it's flags, it's a question of whether or not it's a flag on the character or a flag on the colony itself. So I may want to split this up into unlocks and flags, let's say, where flags is specifically for the colony and unlocks is special abilities for the character. So that's still up in the air. And that should be all of that. So the rest of this is going to be over in, a variety of places. But I started working on again, 35, 45 minutes later. I know I'm rolling it back a little bit, but, I don't want to admit how long it really took me to get over myself and get to doing a lot of serious work. We ended up back over here at map demo. And this, again, is where things really started rolling. So, in the first hour, I set up this food repair box. Now, you'll notice that if you're reading through this, we have HP in here too. I added that in the second hour. I realized you actually also need to see your HP on the map. But this is basically a heads-up display, a stats display at any rate, above the map, telling you how much HP, how much fuel reactor power you have, and how much how many repair bots you have. Because again, as we're traveling in a dark room, you would have water, which is our reactor power. You'd have food, which is our repair bots. Again, in a dark room, you could eat food to heal. Here, in our version of it, you can use repair bots to heal, but they also have to be consumed as you're traveling. Again, my flavor for that is that traveling through space damages your ship. Things between little tiny meteorites and radiation damage, etc., etc., etc. So that was my idea. That's how I'm justifying it in our version. And then there's also HP. So once you run out of repair bots, now your ship's getting totally destroyed and your character is actually taking damage, right? Or in a dark room, you started starving to death, which caused you to lose HP. So that's why all those things have been added to the display. And let's see. Yeah, okay. So part of this I also did in the first hour. The rest of it, which was this much. This much was in the first hour. The rest of it was the second hour. And now we can start talking about everything else that happened now that we're more or less in the second hour. Because, again, this, which is obviously updating the display for fuel, reactor power, and repair bots, it was coupled with the corresponding items changed, equipment changed in down here. This would, wait a second. Okay, so if I recall correctly, and I realized it was just this morning, so I shouldn't be blanking on this so hard, but I did get this started, and I changed it in the second hour. So, over here, we'll talk about this now. We'll skip the rest of that stuff up there, and start talking about this change, because this is the next logical progression. Obviously, when things change on the character, and I talked about this during the last code review, we need to know. So, I set up on, let's see, character, there it is. Huh, why does this say changed? Why does it say something changed? All right, well, the redo and undo buttons aren't doing anything, so we're going to ignore this little black dot in the corner here and move forward. So, as you can see, oh, that's why. Okay. So this is not actually, let me close this, don't save, because that would be bad. I wonder how that happened. But we scroll up, scroll down. Oh, there we are. I am blind. Okay. So as you can see, I have a whole bunch more events plugged into this guy. So originally this was inventory changed. Originally I just had inventory change in the first hour, and then that was all I set up on the character. And then at the start of the second hour I went, you know what? I'm really going to have to break this all up. So far we have equipment change, items changed, resources changed. So this will allow us to handle, for example, equipment change will allow us to handle reactor power change. Items changed will be repair bots. We are not really using any resources right now, but I put it in there just because. And then HP change is obvious. Again, we'll start losing life if our ship runs out of repair bots to keep it alive in deep space. And current HP is that one. HP change is, again, not one we're not using. That's max HP. I feel like I confuse myself all the time with this. I should probably change HP to max HP, but it is what it is. So anyway, yeah, that's not really being used, but I figured it made sense along with this to get on there. So we set up those guys, and the other thing I realized I had to do was bind this event listener to these callbacks, because otherwise this property ends up being the character instead of the event types. Again, it may have made more sense to just extend entity with event listener. That would solve all this problems right here, but that's not what we did. So this being the world we live in, as I say, these are the things we have to do to make things work. So we bind that. That was the other change. And then I think we can pop back over to map demo right quick. Actually, you know what? Let's hop over to utils really quick, because we're just talking about this change right here. So the other things I realized that we needed to change now that I'm using utils using the event listener a bit differently. This ended up happening a bit later. I will come back to this. I'll circle back to this in a second. But where are we at? Oh, it should be down here on trigger. Let me just double check the GitHub to make sure I'm correct about that. Yeah, okay. So, down here on trigger, if not event type, I started running into this. Well, I did run into this situation because the event types weren't lining up. That the event type was invalid, and right now we weren't doing anything about that, which means that we were getting an invalid event type and then trying to grab the invalid event type, which is undefined, and take the description off of it, which obviously does not work. So we really quick fail before that, again, silently, because that's all we've been doing. We haven't been throwing errors in this program. And then the next thing down here is the if result equals false. I realized later on, and this happens very, very late in the process, towards the end of my hour and 10-minute jaunt here, that it's finally time for me to go ahead and implement this. Again, I had a note here for forever saying consider canceling the event if the listener returns false, something to that effect. So I'm finally doing it. Now, let us... I'm going to save this for half a second, okay? The initialize listeners, we will pop back there when it becomes relevant. All right. Yeah, I think the one minor change over in items, or actually this is IO. No, this is items. Okay, it should be actually both IO and items, but I'm not seeing IO on the list. Curious. Oh no, that's right. It's items.json. Okay, that's where the other change is. So, items.js over here. I added in this top off so that we can just call a function because this happens. So again, this being water, every time you stop at a place, at a friendly place, I should say, in a dark room, you get your water topped off. So same thing. We're going to be calling this pretty often in theory. So I went ahead and just made it a function, and this just sets the reactor power to max reactor power. Again, that's how it worked in the previous game. That's how it will work here. Now, the more important fix here was over in items.json. Here we go. And down here in transports, this used to be just reactor power is 10, reactor power is 15. That ended up meaning that whenever we called top off, our max reactor power was actually undefined. We never actually set it. So originally, and this is why I thought it was an IO, originally I was going to come over to IO, and right after we load it here, right after we load it in transports, I was going to then go back and fix all the transports so that their max reactor power was equal to the reactor power. I realized that was a little bit silly and unnecessary. We can change reactor power to max reactor power here. And then top off will automatically, because we call that when it's initialized, or actually we don't even call it, we just do it automatically over here, right there. We automatically set it to max reactor power, so that fixes the fact that we are not supplied reactor power right here. There is an argument that maybe we shouldn't, and the only reason why we are doing this like this, we're automatically topping it off, is because transports right now are not instances, they're singletons, as you will recall. So whereas stuff like items, so items have an item type and then they have their instances. So this is a singular type and then this is an instance based on a singular type. Same thing with resources, same thing with weapons. Weapon type, weapon. Because we don't do that with armor and transports, anytime the transport is created, we kind of have to top it off. And then if we want to load from a save file, we're just going to have to back out, or we're going to have to just back the reactor power back down to whatever the save value is. So it gets initialized at max, and then we'll just adjust it down. The one way to get around this would be to change this to transport types, and then transport and make it an initialized value or an initialized object. Blah. That would obviously fix it because it works exactly like everything else then. But that's not the way we initially set it up. So, you know, it is. All right. Cool. Back to GitHub so I can take a quick look. Okay. Over here in game, I changed this a little bit. Okay, so yeah, so I called the top off here just in case, because again, when we first create the game, that is when the transport is topped off, because that's when the transport is first initialized. But if we load a new game and start a new game, then it's going to have the same reactor power as the transport had when you exited the previous game, when you exited back to the main menu. So we just went ahead and assigned a player so that we can have access to it, and then topped off and returned the player. Easy peasy. Again, would not be necessary if the transport was an actual instance, but that's not what we're doing right now. So finally, we can rotate back to the map demo and get back to the other changes that we made. So once we had these callbacks right here to, where we at? Yeah, okay. Once we had these in here, then we could introduce a failure state. So once that happened, then we could say, oh, okay, you're out of reactor power or HP. Now we can end the game. So as you can see here, we generate a message. It's either going to be HP, reactor power, or HP and reactor power. I probably should have notarized this a little bit more like I normally do, but frankly, it's pretty straightforward. So we figure out what messages we need to display, whether it's HP and or reactor power. And then we use and. If it's only one of them, then that and will not be added. Otherwise, if it's two of them, the and will be put between. Simple enough. And then we alert with the game over message and why you died. And then we call finish demo and return false. Again, return false is now something we can do because we implemented that code over an event listener. So once we have this code in place, then we also need to track HP. Right? Because now we're losing HP when we run out of repair bots. So that prompted me to add HP to the display up here. And then we had to hook up everything we needed to notice when the HP changed. To update the HP when stuff changed. I didn't actually listen for current HP because I figured the only way it was changing right now was because of the fuel, and that is right here. So at the very beginning, before anything else happens, we go ahead and check if we are out of repair bots, if it's less than 0, and then we take 1 HP worth of damage if it's less than 0. And yeah, so that would update our HP, and then down here if our HP, etc, etc, etc. And that was all working all right, except for the fact that once we got down here to finish demo, these were cool. So this I already had in place. I added the remove the key up, so we're no longer able to control the map from the main menu, because again, we don't actually clear off the previous demo in between demos. We actually leave it on screen. So we need to disable the map, and that's how I did that. The problem then was we got actually a second event listener callback that popped up a duplicate game over screen. And furthermore, when we loaded up a new demo, we got another one. And the game immediately went over. And that was because we were still calling the listeners when we started the new demo up. So that meant that I had to add this remove all listeners. So we hop back over to utils, event listener, and now we can talk about the rest of the code that we did not get to here. So remove all listeners. I went ahead and just set all listeners to a new object like we do at the very beginning when we initialize. And then I created this function initialize listeners, which was cut out of the constructor. So we pulled that out of the constructor and just replaced it with a call. And that's this here. The one change I made here, originally this was just for sim in, etc. And then this code right here. Well, since this initialize listeners could potentially be called for other reasons, I decided to first check whether or not it had already been initialized for each symbol. And if it has been, we don't do anything. Otherwise, if it's empty, if it's undefined, then we can go ahead and add it to the object. So remove all listeners again, empties it out, and then iterates over all of the symbols and adds them back into the dict, or the object. Again, I've been popping back and forth between Python and JavaScript recently, so expect slip-ups like that. All right, and that completes all the code for utils. So that's one checked off the list. Let's check the GitHub right quick. I believe, yeah, map should be our last set of changes. I'm just going to really quick scroll over here on GitHub just to check that I'm not missing any other changes. Oh, I guess there is one minor change over on map demo that I should point out. We gave ourselves repair bots. That way you don't die instantly. Seems fair to me. And now, no. We should be on to, yeah. So the last bit of code, the code that put me over the 1 hour mark, is right here. So I wanted us to be able to keep the player alive for longer. So just like in the previous game, whenever you run into a friendly area in the game, you would get, you'd be able to pick up, I think it was 5 food, and your water would be completely topped off. So here's our water getting completely topped off. Again, top off. And then we get repair bots instead of food. So in order to actually get this code, then we have to set up some more listeners. Now, I could have kept it at move. I could have kept it at this move here and then tried to parse it out from there, but I thought it made more sense to just add more listeners. So this brings us over to map for the last set of changes. Up here at the top of maps, we now have enter and leave for port, dungeon, and colony. Dungeon is obviously unused right now, and the leaves are all unused, but we have enter port and enter colony being used in the map demo, and all the code is in place for any of that. So down here in move, this is the code that we decide that we have actually moved. This code right here, this used to say cur for the record. I changed all references to cur to destination because that's a lot more reasonable and a lot more easy to understand. Plus it allows me to, in this trigger event callback, just say destination instead of destination : cur. That was actually the motivation, but whatever. So in order to figure out whether or not we are moving away from or to a special location, we need to be able to get a symbol at a location, which is not code we had before. So I went ahead and wrote that. And that is basically the same first 2 lines of codes from here. Copy it and then get the row that we need. So copy the map, get the row we need. Double back here because, again, I went, oh wait, hold on a second. We need to double check that this is actually a valid location because location 1 may not be valid. Unlike previously the player's location was guaranteed to be valid because the player couldn't move into an invalid area. Well, since this is just giving us any old location and not the player's location, now we actually do have to type check this. And not type check, but value check it. So once we got all that out of the way, then it's a very simple row slice. Start at the X index and just go until the next index. And that will return you a single character, which is at that location. So, right here. So that's our from symbol and our to symbol. The symbol we are moving from and the symbol we're moving to. And then it's a very simple switch and case setup. Obviously, you can do this with if else's, but not really necessary. And the other thing you could do is actually just set the callback. That would be a lot less text, and it's not unreasonable to do. So basically, how that would look like is let callback equal, or I'll just say let callback, and then instead of this, we'd have callback equals. Or I guess I should say event type. I'm used to doing this with callbacks, but event type equals mat.eventtypes.leave colony. There we go. Lowercase that. And you would do that with all these, and then down here, if event type this dot trigger event type, and this code right here, because this code is all the same for all the things. So, and I feel like I do stuff like this every single every single code review I go, you know what, you could do this simpler. and then I go and show you, and then I'm like, yeah, you know what? It's just plain cleaner. And therefore I change it. So we're doing that again. All right, there we go. And then down here we say event type equals null, just to clear it out. And then there we go. And delete. Delete and delete. And do. There we go. Do. I'm just double checking that I didn't goof anything up. I shouldn't have. It's a simple enough change. But anyway, yeah. So that's the less code version of what we had before. And then this was all already here. With the exception, obviously, again, that was cur instead of destination. So that was everything we needed to get the demo 99%. Well, it's not really 99%, but a large step forward. So at this point, I am going to figure out where I put LiteLike.html. Evidently, it's not open. Hit the go live button, and we'll go ahead and take a look at it. And move that over there. Make sure that this is pointing to the correct direction. And let's push live. All right. So here we are on the map demo. I'm going to go ahead and pop open the inspect tool just in case I did botch something for some reason there. All right, so as you can see, our reactor power is going down. We have 5 HP now, so... Oh no, reactor power, we're out of fuel. We're dead. We are lost in space. It is cold and we have frozen to death. Rip us. So that's the demo over. As you can see, we go back to the demo menu. All this is zeroed out, so I can't move. And that is all functioning correctly. We'll start that again. It started us over just right. Again, that was something I had to fix. And now, this time, we are going to hop back into town. We hopped into the colony, and we got 5 repair bots and topped off our reactor power. Technically speaking, that is reactor power -1 because, you know, I code bad. But regardless, I'll fix that. I actually did not notice that when I was playing because I was like, oh, you know what? I'm not running out of reactor power, so therefore, this is not a problem. Now, there is actually, I don't believe, any way for us to run out of... Let me try. Oh, shoot. I just ran out. I am so good at this game. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Nope. What shape do I got to do in order to try to run out of repair bots? No, actually, it is impossible. Okay, I was going to say. So it is impossible currently in the game to run out of repair bots because repair bots are half of the fuel consumption, and we get 5 repair bots and 10 fuel on each fill up, which is exactly the same amount proportionally speaking. So let me actually hop over to the code then and try to make it so that we can run out of fuel or run out of repair bots. So I will change this to +3 repair bots. And we will go ahead and hit the start map demo. All right. Seven, 6, 5, 4, 0. Okay, here we go. Oh shoot, I missed the crap. I was watching the power and I evidently do not know how to hit the buttons correctly. This is hilarious. Everybody laugh at me. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Shoot. I did it again. Ah, crap. Alright, I swear. This is the last time, alright? I just want to see us run out of HP. Alright, that was the last time. Whatever. I'm confident the HP would work. Who designed this crappy game? Who made the controls so easy for me to screw up? Alright, anyway. That was that. So yeah. So the next thing we have to do is we'll implement a second town, okay? And this will just be a hut. So this will be an abandoned post. Are going to be our version of, or abandoned outpost. An abandoned outpost will be our version of the houses in a dark room. And then we'll have our encounter with the crazy guy who you got to kick out of his house because you're evil like that. And then we'll be able to take it over, and when we return to that will be another place where we can pick up repair bots and reactor power. And so long as that's working all right, well, first I should say is that in order to do that, we'll have to actually have events running, which is why we're doing it. We're doing it so we can get the baseline event running, which is the so actually I take it back. The house invasion one was actually a combat, wasn't it? Yeah, the house invasion one was a combat. I wasn't going to have any combats in this, so I think we'll change that to a no combat one for the demo purposes, and then we'll be able to run into the abandoned outpost. All right, yeah, the plan is to run into the abandoned outpost, have it changed from abandoned outpost symbol on the map to outpost symbol on the map. And then, so that will be one scenario fixed. And then we also have to implement the cities. And the cities are multi-sequence events. So we'll be able to handle that, and we'll put some choices into the multi-sequence events so that we can make sure that the event choices work. And at that point, and then obviously once you clear the city event, then that turns also into a port, so we can make sure that works. And from there, I guess the demo is over because I didn't want to do any combats in it. And, well, I guess we could do one more. We could do a mining post or something like that. A minefield. Not a minefield. That's something completely different. We could do some kind of resource collection place that creates a flag on the colony. We have not initialized in a colony yet, but that is the other reward type we could check. We could attempt. Yeah, and in the city, we can also do the, instead of flag, we can do the upgrade for the character. So we'll have the character get an upgrade in the city. So we'll be able to test both multi-events, choices, and character upgrades in the city. The asteroid mining installation, whatever we call it, that thing can go ahead and do a flag on the colony. Again, we'll have to initialize the colony at that point. That will also, actually, that is an important thing, because when you stop back in on the colony, all of the resources should come out of the player's inventory and go into the colony. And actually, that is another thing. We are not testing on the demo carry weight. which is important. So maybe that's all tied into that. Maybe we go ahead and start putting things into the player's inventory so that his weight goes up, and then handle inventory management as well. So actually there's a lot more we can do with this demo than I first considered. So I guess that's where we're at. I totally forgot that I had set up the inventory screen over here on, let me get you guys swapped over, VS Code. I totally forgot that up here at the top of the map demo, I had set up inventory right here, inventory box, because inventory management was something I wanted to do in this demo. So yeah, okay, a heck of a lot more that I totally forgot that I was going to do. So yeah, this is going to be a little while longer, before we start working on the actual game itself. So anyway, that has been everything. If you guys have been watching, thank you. And thank you for sticking with this series if you have been. I really appreciate it. And I hope that it's been entertaining for you, if not enlightening. Preferably enlightening if you are not familiar with coding to begin with. If you are familiar with coding, then may not be as enlightening, but hopefully still entertaining. So anyway, with all that out of the way, I hope you have a great and wonderful day, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're at in the world. And I will catch you next time.